Bobby, go. You're up. Hey, we are on the air. Welcome to Fired Up. I'm your host for the show, Bob Irwin. We are coming to you live from the gun store here in Las Vegas on radio KSHP 1400 AM. A little bit later, this show will appear in a broadcast on YouTube at Fired Up with Bob Irwin. We are on the radio from 5 to 6 p.m. for those of you listening, driving your car. And the multiple show that we're trying to do at the same time on YouTube. YouTube's a little bit slower getting the show up. So it'll come on the air, actually, if you miss anything, about the time you get home from your drive. And you can watch what you missed. Tonight's guests are defense attorney Alan Butel and homicide detective Phil Ramos. Alan, a little bit of your background for any listeners that have missed you so far.
Nobody misses me. Well, the legal background here is since 1987. I've been practicing law in Clark County, in the district attorney's office for some years, and then in private practice. Also, a brief hiatus up north in Tahoe, practicing in the DA's office in Douglas County. During my periods of time as a defense counsel, I've handled many cases involving firearms. Myself, I'm a concealed weapons permittee and proponent of Second Amendment rights.
Good. And a former Kansas State Trooper in your misspent youth.
Misspent youth, Marine Corps too, and that was really misspent.
A little bit of, it's a great background for this show because a little experience in law enforcement and as an attorney gives a pretty broad view. And we have Phil Ramos over there, a retired homicide detective from LVMPD.
Yes, sir.
Now just playing golf and
dabbling a little bit here and there in some private
cases.
Private death investigations.
If you have a case out there where you think the police department or whoever didn't do a proper investigation of someone you love's death, Phil looks into those cases professionally and does a pretty good job. So you can reach him through our website if you'd like. Either of these gentlemen, just send a text to or an email to bob@firedupmail.com and we will put you in touch. This show is about guns, politics related to guns and self-defense issues. We have in the United States every week hundreds of defensive uses of firearms, as most of us know. So I always start out with a couple of those for educational purposes for our listeners. Some are good, some are bad, some are questionable, but I always leave the names out and generally the details of the individuals because I want listeners to understand what happened and use it as a guide if they're ever caught in a similar situation, what they could have done, what they should have done. Even good shooting, sometimes you can find a little niche, maybe they could have done a little better, saved a lawsuit or saved something else. This is from WBNS-TV 10 in Blacklick, Ohio. Columbus, Ohio police were called to a home on McAndrews Way at 7 p.m. This is in the last few days. After a report of a shooting, when the officers arrived, they found a 24-year-old suspect lying in the middle of the road. He was suffering from a gunshot wound. He was taken to a local hospital where he died. Police determined the suspect was with two other men who were attempting to break into a home when an unknown person opened fire. The two suspects, aged 23 and 26, were both from Columbus. They were arrested. They're being charged in the Franklin County Court as the two who were working with the dead guy during the home invasion and considered accomplices in that felony crime. The resident, the defensive guy, has not been identified by the police department because apparently he did nothing wrong. They're charged with murder. They're charged with murder. That's why I brought this case up, because the felony murder rule, which is used virtually everywhere, Alan, says that
any, well, there's different versions of it, but in the main, if a person is involved with a felony, and usually they're enumerated specific felonies, not just any just any felony, but certain felonies such as burglary, arson, robbery, kidnapping, sexual assault, Those types of criminal conduct that foreseeably involve putting people at risk,
Right.
foreseeably involve violence, then in the course of commission of those acts, if in fact someone dies, if the state and the prosecutor can prove that you intended to commit the underlying felony, then you will be held strictly liable for the death as a first-degree murder.
Right. Even if it was your buddy helping you commit the crime.
If absolutely, you didn't touch a gun, didn't smell a gun, would never touch a gun, you have nothing to do with guns, yet somebody is killed with a gun in the commission of a crime, and you're going down the drain with the person.
So we charge the accomplices.
Absolutely. Strict
Even though they
liability.
didn't do the shooting.
Yeah, it comes as a big surprise sometimes to young defendants, particularly in my experience, gang-related cases where one of the many shoots,
Right.
Someone dies.
They're only the lookout, and
they're
they
going,
get charged with murder.
Yeah, they're going, what happened? I didn't do anything. And they just don't get it.
It's
They didn't teach
group
that.
effort.
They didn't teach that in high school.
Yes. Again, question or comments, you can send a note to bob@fired-up-mail.com. And the gun store here does offer free concealed carry permit classes Mondays, Wednesdays, and Saturdays, 3 times a week. You can find our classes on our website and sign up on the website if you'd like. This is the spokesman review in Spokane, Washington on the 8th. A couple days ago, a resident told police his son alerted him to a stranger who had jumped the fence next door. As he watched, that suspect kicked in the back door of a home in the 2600 block of West Gardner Avenue. That's next door to where this guy is. The resident woman and several children were reportedly at home at the time. So when the neighbors saw this guy, he came over the fence, tried to kick in the back door, kicked in the back door. The neighbor began yelling at him. The man turned around and advanced toward him while swinging a metal pole that was part of a garden implement, apparently. Then the helpful neighbor, when that happened, pulled his handgun and convinced the guy to drop the weapon. The suspect then sat on the lawn with the neighbor holding him at gunpoint until police arrived. Several people witnessed this. They heard the yelling and whatnot. The 42-year-old suspect was arrested on first-degree burglary and felony harassment, threats to kill. His bond is $100,000 during a court appearance. He was already out on bond for some other crime. This is a perfect third-party intervention. The person with the gun simply tried to warn the guy off, and the guy turns and then starts coming at him, swinging this pole, threatening to kill him specifically, and a lot of people heard it. So he didn't even show his firearm until he was threatened. He shows the gun. The guy drops to his knees and surrenders, and he held him there at gunpoint until the police arrived. He certainly, I like this case because he would have, as the guy's advancing with the pole, had reasonable cause to shoot him, but he didn't. The guy wasn't apparently close enough to that he really was worried about it, and he took the better option of not firing. And the police come and get the guy, and away they go. No harm, no foul. Great third-party defense.
Yeah, and I think it's important, Bob, that you pointed out that this guy warned the offender. He clearly had the presence and the ability to inflict bodily harm on the man with the gun.
Okay.
But that split second of I'm going to warn this guy, drop it, get down on the ground, and given that opportunity, the bad guy took the opportunity and said, "Hey, I'm not going to die over this stupid thing," and got down on the ground.
Okay. Great.
That can often be a split-second decision that someone has to make. Cops have to make it all the time. When a citizen has to make it, he's got to be able to say, "Well, I was still in fear of my life," and he probably very well could have been in fear of his life.
Yeah.
But in this case, it turned out best for everybody.
Looks as a very valid shooting, but because you can shoot doesn't mean you should shoot.
Right.
And as either of these gentlemen can tell you, shootings never end when you just shoot the guy. The police come and pat you on the head, give you a new bullet, and send you home.
Yeah.
There is litigation and interviews, and it goes on and on and on. if you can avoid it, avoid it. And this guy was able to do that. Pretty good.
Is there any danger in not just shooting the guy?
Depending on distance and whatnot, it depends. You know, I'm sure that's going to be the argument. If, you know, what we don't know from the reports is how far away the guy was when he drew the gun. And that could change dramatically. If the bad guy with the pole was right on top of him, it was probably a poor decision not to shoot if he put himself in jeopardy.
Yeah, he could have been hurt.
But if there was enough distance to warn the guy off, that's apparently what happened here. We don't know how close it was. This guy may have done something a little risky to do that, but it all came good. These are gunfights and that are always very dynamic situations. There's a lot of details that go on and on. Arizona Star reported in Peoria, Arizona, a homeowner woke up to find a masked intruder. Oh, this is amazing. A masked intruder setting fire to his residence with a blowtorch. He got his pistol. He fired around at the intruder, hitting the guy in the abdomen. Arriving deputies responding to the call about a fire and a home invasion were told by people outside the resident might be inside. The deputies looked through the broken window, saw an unresponsive person lying on the floor. They couldn't enter because of the smoke and flames. The firefighters got there with their equipment. One of them finally got in and pulled out the unconscious guy. He's hospitalized in critical condition, said a Maricopa County sheriff spokeswoman. The firefighter suffered burns that were not life-threatening. At least one additional firefighter and several sheriff deputies were treated for smoke inhalation. They're trying to piece together what happened here. It wasn't immediately known whether the wounded man knew any of the people who lived in the home or what the motive could be. There's no identity release. The wounded intruder fled the scene and was captured by the police about 2 blocks away. This is an unusual home invasion. He finds a guy in his house, lighting the house on fire with a blowtorch, wearing a mask. Lord only knows what the mental situation here, but you know, it's a good story because one of the things we always say on these shows is having a gun in your house in case you need an emergency is like having a fire extinguisher. And in this case, he needed both.
He did need that. There's a lot more going on here than what is being reported.
Tried to stay in the house longer than he should have. Apparently tried to put out the fire instead of just once the guy ran getting out of the house and he was overcome by smoke. And it's really lucky his life got saved.
Well, there's another example of your felony murder rule. Had someone die.
Yeah.
Fire, or otherwise. Huh?
So you need to have emergency stuff in your house. If you don't, you have a fire extinguisher, right? Not because you expect a fire, and hopefully you never need it. Same reason you have a gun in your house. Again, I would look at this case and go back. As soon as you saw the guy in the house with a blowtorch, the first option would have been to run. Simply, if there's nobody else in the house, which we appear there wasn't, or they would have said so. The guy's going to try and burn your living room down or whatever. If you get out of the house and let the fire department and the police department come in and do it.
Now, unless where this guy was positioned, setting the fire was blocking your exit.
He couldn't get out. Yeah, we don't know that.
Yeah.
So but always, to me, I always advise people, if you can run without damage to yourself, run. The fire department's going to get there, put the fire out anyway, and you get to inhale a lot less smoke. I'll try and do a follow-up on this if they ever discover what actually was going on here. And this was a very weird case. The Daily Journal, this is in Belgrade, Missouri. The Sheriff's Office Department is actively investigating a home invasion that took place Wednesday afternoon, this past Wednesday. When officers arrived at the house, a male in his 30s who was reportedly trying to break in the home was deceased with a gunshot wound to the head. The resident had noticed a pickup truck pulled up so close to the house that he got up from his chair and went to the door. As he got there, the suspects, there were a couple guys, immediately started kicking the door. That's when the man ran back to the living room table a few feet and grabbed a pistol. He had the safety chain that was securing the door shut, and the door came open a little, but the security chain caught it. At that point, he had the firearm and fired a warning shot. actually fired it through a glass decorative window next to the door. He saw the two male figures turn and flee from the porch. So he thought they were going to the rear of the house. So he ran back into the kitchen and locked the rear door. When he came back into the living room where he could clearly see the door, he saw the pickup truck speeding away. He was not sure what was going on, and then he heard another noise. He looked out the window and saw the homeowner. This guy was a renter. Saw the homeowner arriving in a vehicle. Once the homeowner reached the front of the house, the victim opened the door, and the homeowner saw what he thought was a man that was dead laying on his porch. The arriving homeowner had found the deceased guy on the front porch. He had an aluminum baseball bat and was wearing gloves. The victim, the resident, had shot through the window near the door, as I said. The bullet he fired that he thought was a warning shot struck the would-be intruder. Police believe the man's intent was to rob the residence, but they still have a lot of investigating to do. They believe it's a home invasion gone wrong and the man in the house was trying to defend himself. The sheriff's department is looking for two other suspects, and they could be charged with felony murder, correct? And we're fairly confident they know who they're looking for. Mm-hmm. I have advocated on the show from time to time, usually with the consternation of my other guests, that at times I think a warning shot is appropriate if you know where the bullet's going. This is not one of those cases. The bullet went into a suspect and killed him. The guy didn't even realize he was there. It's probably a good shoot anyway because the guy was breaking into his house. Mm-hmm. But so I don't think he's in trouble for the shooting. But this is a warning shot that certainly should have been fired in a safe direction and clearly wasn't because it hit the guy on the porch in the head.
But then what's a safe direction though for a warning shot? You know,
well,
bullets have a mind of their own once they leave that barrel, and it's hard to say.
That's correct. You know, if you're living in a house with dirt floor, you shoot it in the floor, into the dirt.
Two-story house, you go up into the roof and you hit the kid up there.
Sometimes there is no safe direction. If you don't know where the bullet's landing, every bullet hits something. In this case, the guy is extremely lucky because this was actually the bad guy that got hit instead of the arriving police officers or something like that. This is a pretty dangerous thing here. The gentleman, I left out a story. The gentleman they said was quite elderly that fired this shot, and some of them questioned why he had a gun, you know, within reach in his house. You live in the real world, you have a gun within reach in your house. So I don't fault him for that. Good shoot, yeah, but could have been a disaster. I'm going to skip over 5, and here we go. This is from Arkansas Online on the 5th. A woman in Centerton was shot with her own gun during a struggle after 2 intruders entered her house Tuesday morning. The woman called 911 just after 8 a.m. To a Torbay Terrace, that's the town actually, residence, and said someone was in her house. She armed herself with a handgun and hid in the closet. So far, so good. Call the cops, hide. If you can't get out, hide. 2 men entered the room where she was and charged across her. The article said a closet. I'm visualizing more of a dressing room that's further large. They charged at her. During the struggle, the woman was shot in the abdomen and leg before the men fled. The woman's injuries are not life-threatening, they believe. The men are described as being in their late teens, early 20s. One, I'd left this in, and I have no idea what it means. One was described as having a sunken face. Mm-hmm. Anybody have a clue what that means?
Yeah, his cheeks are sunken in, and you know.
Oh, like dehydrated or okay.
Eyes.
A police description. Look for the guy with the sunken face. Mm-hmm. Okay. And was wearing dark clothing. The other had a bandana over his face and was wearing white shoes. So he's kind of a snappy dresser. Officers and deputies from several departments established a perimeter but did not find the men. The investigation is continuing. Now, this is something I hear from people a lot. who don't want to have a gun in their house. They say, you know, if I had one, somebody would take it away from me and use it on me. And that does, on occasion, happen.
Yeah,
Certainly.
Yeah.
I'm sure you've seen other cases where that's been what's happened. You have to have the will and the skill to use the gun. When I look at this, I'm visualizing, you know, one of our students who comes in from CCW for CCW renewal, and they haven't fired their gun in the 5 years that elapsed before the renewal is required. If you have a gun in your house, you have to have the skill to use it. That means practicing more than once every 5 years, shooting 30 rounds. Getting involved in handling the gun so you can handle it without thinking about it. You know how the safety works, how to load it, how to unload it. And I think if you do that, the familiarity with the gun to getting the skill will lead you to the will to use the gun because you'll be comfortable with the gun.
Yeah, exactly.
This lady had neither. And clearly in this case, the gun being in her house was a detriment to her. There's nothing in here that says the two guys were armed.
Well, and then we don't know if she lived by herself or if the gun belonged to someone else and it just happened, she just happened to know where it was at. If you are of the mindset that the reason you're getting a gun is to protect yourself against home invasions or any kind of situations that require that type of self-defense, then darn it, once you get the gun, once you pass the test, keep practicing. Like Bob said, that's got to be second nature. You got to be able to draw, react, squeeze, and do that within a millisecond, because if you don't, this could very easily happen. A gun could be used against you. Because you already hesitated.
Hesitation because the guys are coming and she, oh my God, and they got the gun.
Yeah, I don't want to hurt somebody.
You've got a split second in real life to react. You have to have done it enough times that you just react without thinking about it. Again, concealed weapon class every Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday here at the gun store. They're free. We just charge $10 for the state paperwork, wherever state you're getting one in. And it's, if you're one of those listening to this that have a gun in your house, your husband's got a gun, your wife has a gun, you don't know how to use it, come on down.
When are the classes?
Every Monday, Wednesday, and every Saturday.
Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday.
3 days a week.
What time do they start?
They start at 9 a.m.
Sharp.
Yes, usually, unless the instructor's wandering in.
Break for lunch and you're finished at about 4 or 5?
You're finished about 5 or 5:30. There's a little qualification at the end. You can qualify the next day if you want. And
Weird thing, I heard it was free.
it's free, yes. It's amazing. I'm just so impressed with this place doing that. There was some, I touched on it last week, there was some data released by the Metro Police Department that currently they're issuing about 400 concealed carry permits a month. We're currently teaching about 300 a month.
Nice.
So that's, we have a market share. Imagine if you had 70% of the cases were being tried.
And rightfully so. And in my unsolicited view, this is the best place to buy a gun, the best place to get your CCW, and the staff is great.
Agreed.
I'm not getting paid for that.
I am.
Here we go with a bad one. I'd love to work on this guy's case, and I think after you guys look at it, you'll want to. This is King 5 TV in Western Washington, reported on the 29th, and this goes back because this is a trial now going on over that shooting. Store clerk at Spanaway, that's the town, has been charged with second-degree murder after he shot and killed a man who was attempting to steal items from the store on a Friday night. After his wife was shot in the stomach during a robbery a little over a month prior, the 30-year-old clerk had been especially on edge, fearful, of course, of a similar incident. In the prior robbery, two guys came in and just shot his wife in the stomach and took money and ran. He said in an interview, "I am scared. I'm scared of everybody who is walking in now. When people just walk by, I'm frightened." He mentioned at NBC King 5 TV there. Friday night, he caught a man shoplifting in the store. When he confronted him, the suspect dropped the items and put up his hands. When the clerk realized the man was not a threat, he put away the pistol that he was carrying. He put it back in his holster or in his pocket. After that, things get a little sketchy. Authorities say that's where it all went wrong. The clerk said the bad guy grabbed at his jacket and told him to wait there so he could call the police. But instead, a physical fight started between the two men. The clerk claims the suspect was trying to get his gun during the scuffle, and he fired in self-defense. Interject here, you don't want to be talking to the police immediately in the midst of the thing. That was his story. Unfortunately, after his wife was shot, they also installed video cameras, and the whole thing's on tape. The video captured the altercation and the shooting. Investigators say the video shows the clerk repeatedly punching the shoplifter and shooting the suspect twice in the back as he tried to leave the store. The 21-year-old suspect died from the gunshots. He had a prior for burglary and pled guilty to attempting to abduct a 6-year-old girl in nearby Tacoma. Obviously, this is a bad guy. However, the county sheriff said this is a tough one because we can understand why the store clerk was on guard. His wife had been shot there a month before during a robbery, but that doesn't give you a license to shoot people who are involved in shoplifting. If convicted now, he's going on trial. He's been indicted. The clerk will face up to life imprisonment for second-degree murder.
Man, that's a tough call on that one.
There's obviously 100 things wrong with this case, and all of us have seen this guy before. He's wound up, and he just.
Why did you say it was second-degree murder?
That's what they've indicted him for, was second degree.
Well, it could very easily be first.
Yeah, I mean, they're being nice so far with the indictment.
There's a phenomenon that we come across in shootings like this. It's called post-traumatic amnesia, and people truly don't remember what happened. Like after an accident,
I know. I've had a couple of those where they have no idea what just happened.
Right, and you can sit there and you're talking to them. What happened? I have no idea. I don't remember. Last thing I remember is I saw this guy coming at me, and I grabbed my gun. I don't know how many times I shot. I don't know if I hit him. I don't know what happened after that. And it's usually very true.
I bet you 100% that's what's going on here. The guy wasn't intentionally lying, but he didn't remember, so he made up a story because they're saying what happened.
Yeah,
and he didn't know, so
right
here it comes.
Yeah. So there's a couple of things that are stacked against him, particularly the videotape and his version to the cops of what he recalls happening. Now, whether he was being deceptive or not, we don't know. Who knows? Hopefully, it'll work out in his favor, because I don't think that he truly intended to hurt this guy if the guy gave up. And Monday morning quarterbacking this thing is, if you're in this situation, guy puts his hands up and he's giving up, make him get on the ground. Don't just take.
And when you look at why he did this, one of the long seminars I took, a couple of weeks, was from a University of Minnesota, a thing called Force Science, which I encourage everybody who does this to take one of their classes. They're really long and really expensive, but it's taught all by psychologists and kinesiologists who understand the mechanics of this and how people think, and this type of a blackout. And lots of cases that we studied in there of this that are similar to this, where I don't think, from what I'm reading, that the guy really thinks he's lying and he can't explain the videotape. You do things without thinking them through. I'm going to prolong the show, but we had a case that we studied there where a police officer responding to a 7-11 robbery, he pulls in, a patrolman, he pulls in a couple of feet over from the double glass doors, and he sneaks over and he sees a guy pointing a gun at the clerk. So he decides that maybe he can get in and help the clerk, as a guy might get shot and so forth. So he's over by the door and he pushes the door a little bit. And what he then says happened in his officer's report is that the door moved. The suspect saw that because the victim, who was looking toward the door, saw him and raised his eyes at him. The suspect spins around, fires a round that hits the glass door, shatters one of the doors. He leans in the broken door, he fires 2 shots and kills the suspect. The problem was, after he wrote that report, the doors were not shot. He remembers the door shattering, and that's why he leaned in and fired, because the guy fired at him. The guy did not fire at him, nor was the door shattered. The guy did turn toward him. And he raced ahead in his mind. This is what he thought happened, because his mind is running scenarios. If this continues, what's going to happen to me?
Right, right.
And it's all in the same flash. And that was his story to the investigators. And they brought him over and said the door wasn't hit and the suspect didn't fire his gun. And it was like, that can't be. I saw it. He did see it. That's why when I look at this, I'm going, wow, this guy needs, I'm assuming this guy is telling the truth. He needs a gigantic defense team that's full of psychologists that understand this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And I wish I could say that I was that guy. I'm not, but
Be
I've been to their class, you know.
It's going to be interesting to see how this works out.
Yeah, it's, we have a thing, I was on Channel 3 News last night. There's a proposition, 2 propositions going on the Nevada ballot this year. And Proposition 1 has decided, the legislature has decided that will be the universal background check thing. That it will require that everybody in Nevada buying a gun, any type of gun from anybody, gets a background check. It, I feel, is a big waste of time. If you want to pull up Channel 3, there's a little interview there, a video they did last night with both sides, an ex-state senator taking one side and me taking the other. Their belief is that universal background checks will reduce crime and reduce, one of their big things on here is to reduce domestic violence. But their bill, as it is written now, that they're going to vote on apparently, exempts domestic partnerships as people who need a background check. So if you're living with your brother or your wife or your cousin, you're sharing a domicile, and you give the other party a gun, you don't have to do a background check. And yet this is going to stop domestic violence. That's exactly backwards for reality. But anyway, and the other problem I have with it as a gun dealer is, so it isn't too expensive for people to do the background check. It waives the fee, that state $25 fee, if you buy a gun from a private party. It doesn't waive the fees if you buy a gun from a gun shop. So if you buy a gun from me, it's $25 extra. You buy it from Phil, it's free. So that will not encourage people to be going getting background checks if it's cheaper to buy from a private party. Anyway, it's a lot of hooey. It will cost the state of Nevada a fortune. Phil and I were talking before the show about, you can't just have a law that says you have to get a background check, because then what do you do with people who don't? Then you have to have a fine for the background check or imprisonment, and then they appeal that, and you have to have courts and juries, and they appeal to the Supreme Court to see if the law is constitutional and so forth. This is going to cost the state of Nevada millions of dollars, and my belief is it won't prevent a single crime.
And I can tell you from the number of domestic violence murders that I investigated, whether it involved a firearm or a knife or a shovel, if the violator who is committing the violence against his partner is so enraged that he's going to do it one way or another, it doesn't matter whether he has a gun or not. The person is still going to be victimized by the person who's committing the domestic violence, whether he's got a gun or not. This isn't going to do, in my view, a thing to reduce the domestic violence murders.
Well, one of their things always has been with gun violence is 2/3 of the violent deaths with guns are suicides.
Hmm.
And if we have background checks, then the suicidal people won't get guns. Well, that even if that was true, that doesn't mean they're not going to commit suicide. It just means they're going to do something else.
Right.
Which brings me, we'll have a discussion on this. I'm going to get one of the guys on the show that's pushing this universal background check thing as we get a little closer to the election. You're all going to get to vote on whether we have universal background checks or not. And what the bill will actually say, we don't know, because the legislature's going to push it and change it and whatever. Hopefully, we don't become the only people that charge them for the background check, because nobody will buy from a gun shop anymore at all. That'll be it. We're out of business. However, there's a related story. This is from guns.com, which is a wonderful pro-gun website. They had a story last week on the 9th. A federal grand jury has indicted a 74-year-old woman for straw buying more than a dozen guns. A straw purchase in the lingo of our industry is a person who can pass a background check, comes in and buys a gun, fills out the forms. This is my gun. I'm not a felon, with the intent of giving it to somebody else. It's a straw. They're a straw man. It's a fake sale, and then she would give the gun to somebody else. In this case, she was buying guns and giving them. When they indicted her in Hubbard, Pennsylvania, she had bought 14 on 14 different dates. Had bought guns from retailers in Youngstown and Warren, Ohio. That included 11 Glocks, 3 6 Sauers, and 2 AR-15s. Where she did the paperwork, she stated that she was the intended owner. Investigators found that she bought them for a 38-year-old man from Youngstown, Ohio. He cannot possess firearms under federal law because of a 2012 drug conviction. Then he moved the guns to third parties who were not identified, but were even bigger felons, not just a guy with a felony for drug possession. The authorities recovered 6 of the guns from a home in Boardman, Ohio last December. The 31-year-old was arrested for violating his parole. Public records show this guy had the gun. Public records show he had drug charges dating back to 2003. He was released from prison August 11 and was currently under supervised release. He's the guy, he's on parole already, and he ends up as the guy with the guns, who then is then selling to other people. If you are naive enough or dumb enough to let somebody talk you into buying a gun in your name where they can't buy one, and they'll give you all kinds of excuses. I don't have time to go there. No, the reason they don't want to do the background check. Now, this woman is looking at years in prison. I don't know whether that's going to be reality. She's apparently did this just because she's naive. There was no monetary gain even mentioned, that she was just doing the guy a favor because she liked him. At least if you do this for somebody, get a couple $100 because you're going to spend some time in prison over this.
Yeah, that could have been the incentive that this jerk used to get her to buy the guns. Who knows? Hey, go, grandma, buy these guns from me, and I'll kick you in, $300-400 for each one. Or
and the other half of this, which we see occasionally in our business, and ATF has so many cases, where actually they're making the purchase the straw person because of threats.
Yeah, that's
we know where your children go to school. If you don't buy this gun for us, they're not going to make it home. And what are you going to do then? It's an almost impossible problem to solve, but don't be this lady and do it willingly.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, I can't imagine them actually putting her in prison at 74, because reading her interviews, she just was helping out.
And I would imagine that the burden on the state's going to be to prove that this 74-year-old woman knew that the 31-year-old violator was a prohibited person.
Or she even knew it was against the law to fill in the form for somebody else. Anybody else. She may not know that. It's against the law, even if the guy you're filling the form out for is not a felon. You have to sign it. You are the actual buyer. And if you're buying a gun for a gift for somebody else, you're allowed to do that.
Yeah.
you just got to be honest when you do the paperwork. I'm going to give it a Fred, you know, and there are all kinds of ways you can actually buy them a gun as a gift. We suggest now, if you're doing that, we sell a guy a gift card for the gun. You know, we have gift cards here at the gun store, like all their businesses do.
Mhm.
And then, you know, you get a gift card for $300. You can come, you know, and use that to buy your gun or whatever. So he's the one filling out the paperwork, and it's fine. And you can still surprise him with a gift card. He opens the box, and there's a gift card that says, "This will be a Glock when you come down to the gun store and do the paperwork yourself." You know, if we could find a Glock for sale anywhere. We're a little short of guns right now with all this stuff going on, terrorism. Questions or comments to bob@firedupmail.com. Please friend us on Facebook if you get a chance, or like us on Facebook. If you have a corporate event coming up, we do those for people with machine gun shooting and so forth. Contact Melissa at thegunstorelasvegas.com. I didn't get a chance for a follow-up on this today. California, for those of you who are unfortunate enough to live there and like guns at the same time, they had a bill that was killed in committee last week. Now it's back. It's called AB 2459. It's sponsored by a Democrat named Kevin McCarthy from Sacramento. Complicated. It does three things in California law. It bans all home firearms dealers. You cannot have a federal firearms license if you are not in a storefront operation by state law. That doesn't seem to be a big deal, but a lot of the rural areas, a guy selling out of his garage or part-time is the only place to get a gun without driving 100 miles. It'll put them out of business. It also would require all firearms dealers video record all areas of their stores wherever firearms, ammunition are stored, displayed, carried, handled, sold, or transferred, including counter safe, vaults, cabinets, shelves, cases, and entryways. And there's some technical stuff about how high the resolutions and so forth. So if there is a bad thing happen or a burglary or something, you have it on videotape, and it requires they store those tapes for up to 10 years. So you're talking lots and lots of cameras and lots of expense. A lot of us have a lot of videotape anyway, sure, because this is a pretty good security thing, but now it's a requirement. And the killer is AB 2459 also mandates liability insurance that covers criminal acts of second parties using a firearm or ammunition that was placed in commerce by the dealer. Oh, come on. Even if the store was a victim of a crime, to put that in, it goes in the details. If the store is burglarized and they steal guns, the dealer can be sued for the use of those guns because they would have been stolen if the guy had proper security. That's the key. If they're taken by a straw purchaser that passes all the background checks and has a great cover story and you don't pick it up, and a criminal gets a hold of that gun because you entered it into commerce, you're responsible. Obviously, that insurance cannot be written by anybody. So not having insurance, you're out of business.
Well,
You're required to have the insurance, but even one claim, that's it, you're done.
and what insurance company is going to sell that kind of coverage?
They're not going to write it. They can't write it. That they're, you know, if somebody steals a gun from your store and then a year later gives it to another guy who shoots Alan with it, pardon the example, Alan, you're responsible because the gun got into commerce because you had it in your store. This is a committee thing. They were voting on it today.
As long as they do this to the
committee.
automobile manufacturers, I'll
There
be
you
good
go.
with it.
Yeah.
It's
As long as they do it to the car dealers, we're good, right?
Or the tobacco industry.
Yeah.
yeah, or the vapor things that are killing right
Yeah.
now.
Whoa. Hey, what about pressure cookers? Huh?
Oh yeah.
Hoverboards. Boom. Catching on fire.
Hey, man, let's make every retail sales.
Unfortunately, this bill is in California, where the Democrats have 90% of the, or the anti-gun side has 90% of the Assembly and Senate seats. And if this goes through, there'll be lawsuits, but Unless it's overturned by a court, guns are gone.
And then we'll have more Californians moving
So-
here.
Hey, then nobody will be dead in California by a gunshot. Yeah. Without guns, nobody gets shot, right?
Yes,
What are
certainly.
What
Believe
are,
that.
what are the Crips and the Bloods gonna do then? Have to fight with sticks.
Sure.
They buy guns from Mexico. You know, the drugs go one way and the guns go the other, or they buy them from the ATF. Sorry, guys, that you did that. Remember the Pamela Smart case? I just threw this in. It was a murder where Pamela Smart, she's in prison, convinced her 15-year-old lover, a kid named Billy Flynn, and 3 of his friends to murder her husband, a guy named Gregory Smart. Anyway, the case is long since over. It took place back in 1990. Everybody's been released from prison except Pamela Smart. Even the guy who did the actual shooting is out of jail now. He had stolen the gun used, a Charter 38, from his father, who, when he discovered that, the father immediately reported it as stolen, told him he thought his son took it, and that enabled them to solve the case. Anyway, you know, when police take guns for evidence, sometimes they're hard to get back. He just got a court order, the father, to get the gun back. It's been 25 years. Even the suspect who did the shooting was just released on his 41st birthday. He was 15 or 16 when he did the shooting. All the accomplices, everybody but the woman, have been paroled and gone. And now Dad has a court order to get his gun back because they don't need to still be holding it in evidence in case somebody goes to retrial.
Back, yeah, an appeal or something.
So if the police take your gun, you will get it back if you live long enough. I mean, this is a really high profile case. I understand that. But after the shooter actually was paroled, one would think, you know,
Well,
you wouldn't need a court order to get your gun
my
back.
comment is, does he have his gun back?
Not yet.
Right.
No.
And I'm going to tell you, he probably will never get it back.
Well, and
You right?
as
Am I right?
as you mentioned that, locally here, there was a story just last week. One of the smaller outlying agencies impounded a gun under similar circumstances. Everything was adjudicated. The owner got a court order for it to be released. And lo and behold, the gun's gone out of the evidence vault.
Yeah.
Never to be
I've had
seen
that
again.
happen in cases where they wanted me to go look at a gun and it's gone.
Yeah.
I recall in the town that this was years ago, new people there now, but a rifle that I was supposed to inspect on a criminal case that had been picked up was actually in one of the police detectives' garage where he kept it in case he wanted to go hunting. Nice rifle. He just forgot to log it out of the evidence vault for personal use. But anyway, upcoming events, we got the Las Vegas Gun Show next weekend at the Sports Center. That's right up the street here at Sunset and the Strip. We're going to be there selling our brass. I will be up there at least part of Saturday to answer questions you may have that you don't want to put on an email, and I understand that. We get lots of those. And Nevada Firearms Coalition is having their annual banquet on the 23rd, Saturday at the Gold Coast Casino, www.nvfac.org. You can get tickets for the event. It's their fundraiser for the year. They're the NRA branch here in Nevada. We're going to be back next week between 5 and 6 p.m. here on 1400 AM radio and later on in the evening on YouTube. And it says my guest next week will be Phil Ramos. It won't be. I just forgot. I did. This is from last week. That's fine. I typed them over and I didn't get to this page. So anyway, questions and comments to Bob at Fired Up Mail. A couple of other little things. We got about 5 minutes left here. BearingArms.com reports the Mississippi House concurred with their Senate and passed legislation to abolish the requirement for concealed weapon permits in the state. The legislation expands current carry provisions from carrying in a bag, purse, or satchel without a permit to carrying a holstered without a permit as well. Every Town for Gun Safety, Bloomberg's group tried to defeat it and oppose it. It got passed anyway. The governor has now signed it. So Mississippi is now a carry state where you can carry your gun, provided you're not a criminal. You can legally own the gun. You can carry concealed.
And the South shall rise again.
And Iowa just did the same thing with legalization of suppressors. So now you may use, it's been signed by the governor. You can use a suppressor. You can buy them legally. You can buy them legally anyway, but now you can actually have them without state interfering, only complying with federal law. Like here, you can have silencers here in Nevada. We sell silencers in our retail store, but we're quiet about it. Thanks for that. Anyway, that now Iowa is the 42nd state to legalize suppressors, so you can use them in hunting or in target shooting or whatever, and not damage your hearing.
Is Nevada one of those 43?
Yes, suppressors are legal here, and you have to comply with the federal law. There's a $200 transfer tax and a background check and so forth. It's taking 3 or 4 or 5 months to get them. And for a long time, the police department didn't want to sign off on suppressors, but they do now. So they're not really an issue. The mafia has suppressors here. Why can't I have one too?
Hey, Oscar Goodman says there's no such thing as organized crime. There is no mafia. It's just a figment of law enforcement's imagination because they can't solve the crimes.
I got a buddy retired now who was the gaming control chief investigator for like 14 years. He actually told me some stories. You mean he made those up? That's hard to believe. Terrorism is still rearing its ugly head. We've had attacks in Brussels and in Pakistan and so forth. It could happen here. I implore you, if you have a concealed carry permit, carry your firearm. You may need it to defend yourself. You may need it to stop a terrorist attack. I don't think there's anybody looking into terrorism that believes Las Vegas is not on the target list.
Yeah.
And it is, we are, you know, the head of the snake here, I think.
Mm-hmm.
You can defend yourself if you're in a crime scene, crime in the middle of a crime, street robbery, or terrorism attack. First, try to run. We've encouraged that in several stories. Get out of the way if you can. If you can't run because others there you need to protect or there's no direction to go, hide. If you can't hide, attack the guy with the gun before he kills you. You got to react by defending yourself. Don't sit there and die. Fight. You are part of the militia. Your job is to defend the United States against enemies, foreign and domestic. So do that. Owning a firearm, I believe, is a duty you have. Phil, we didn't talk about, we talked about Proposition 1, which is the universal background checks. We didn't talk about Proposition 2. We got about a minute, maybe. There's 2 propositions in Nevada. The second one is for recreational marijuana. It's Proposition 2. Guns got Proposition 1. Good thing.
Well, here's the way you can look at it like this. If Proposition 2 passes, nobody's going to care about Proposition 1. They'll just be too busy eating Cheetos.
You know, I'm raised in the area of the, you know, it's the gateway drug and this and that. I've talked to DUI lawyers about it, and they're really concerned about driving.
Yes. Yes.
In your own house, who cares? You know.
Yeah.
We'll be back next week. We're out of time. I'm getting the wave off here. Thanks for tuning in to Fire It Up. Hopefully you're watching this on YouTube by now. We'll be back next week with some guest when I figure out who it is. Thanks for watching.
Bye.